Good afternoon, everyone. We'll be getting started here in just a few minutes, but I thought while we were waiting for everything to get settled, I'd go ahead and ask you guys, this is the matchups for today. Who are you rooting for? Let's see if anyone in chat has any favorites. We'll be getting started here in about 4 minutes. Alright, let's go ahead and turn on the camera. Good afternoon, everyone. Hope you're doing well today. I'm doing alright. Throat's a little today, but things aren't too terrible. So, as you can see, as I'm going to turn down this music here, we've got some new faces here today. We've got a bunch of new names. Most of these people have not participated in this tournament at all, but some have, but even those who have not played in a while. So, without further ado, let's get things rolling with our first matchup. That's not what I wanted. I also changed all the maps. I got a brand new set of maps for this week. Hopefully they're not all terrible. Alright, we've got Sotek 4. I don't see the first match. One sec. Sotek 1. The Nico Mueller donating 50 through Super Chat. He says, damn boy, you on a tourney roll. Yep. See, do I have either of them on Steam? One sec, we're having one of those international moments. See, Total War. I don't have either of them. It's one of those things where you can't see games a lot of the time if people live in a different area from you. So I gotta wait for one of them to add me on Steam. So our first matchup today is gonna be between Redo and a Move Hacker. And we're gonna be seeing the Empire versus the Dwarves. Tell y'all what, I actually I've been bumping around a lot today, and I was watching the other Warhammer tournament going on right now, and oh boy, they were having problems. They were having problems. There we go. Steam. Alright. Send an invite to him. Ah, there it is. Oh, I got the capsule. Failed to join. What? Well, let's refresh. I've never seen error to join. That's a little weird. Oh, it vanished. Oh, they must have. I wonder if they closed it. Oh, Trottes says, thanks for all the awesome content. Keep up the good work. Thanks, man. Tell y'all what, I've been spending almost the entire day. Oh, here it is. Working on a Legendary Lord video. And the Legendary Lord video I'm working on, I am not done with the history portion yet, and it's already 16 pages long. Which, for reference, the entire Heinrich Himmler video, so like Heinrich Himmler's entire video script was 16 pages. So the character I'm working on, their history alone is going to be the length of Himmler's entire video, more than likely. Will I be refining the rules for the tourney? Eventually. Probably not anytime super soon, because we just got the Festag update, so I'm fine to let that stand for a bit. Now we just got to get what's his face in here, and we're good to go. I was having a read this week again of Tarmacon. What do you think of it? Oh, I really like Tarmacon. Tarmacon is a super fun story. It gets a little weird sometimes. Some of the characters and some of the units they used were a little bit odd or over the top. Prince of Sins donating 382 says, thanks for the awesome content. Keep up the good work, man. Thanks. Thanks, brothers. Thanks for all the generous donations today. Appreciate it, guys. Alright, we got everybody in here, so let's go. But yeah, like I was saying, I was watching the other Warhammer tournament earlier today, and they were having, like, all sorts of problems. And, like, people just fighting with each other and being rude, and people trying to break the rules, and it was just like, this looks horrible. I do not miss that part of the tourney scene. I much prefer what we do around these parts. Redo says he was hoping not to get Dwarves game 1. Hard to do. A lot of Dwarves this week. There's a lot of Dwarves here today. We actually have a lot of repeat factions today. I think we have 3 Dwarves, 3... I think we have like 3 Dwarves, 2 Empire, 2 Norsca, a Lizardman, and yeah, and that's it. So a lot of dwarf, a lot of good guys, but the Norskins have shown up. What tournament is it I was watching? I don't want to get super specific into it. That would be rude. It's not my business. And we are on different maps from the tournament we did yesterday, so it should be nice and interesting. I went in and scouted out a bunch of maps and tried to find ones that I liked. Where's the best place to request who would win matchups? The best place is in the comment section of the most recent who would win. Whenever I start getting ready for a who would win episode with Turin, what we do is we go to the most recent episode and we read through all the comments and we pick out the ones we like the most, and then we'll suggest a few if there's any that we have on our mind, and then we'll pick the best like 5. Alright, so let's go ahead and get into this. Hopefully my throat will not betray me over the course of the stream. Any event, so let's start with the Dwarves. We've got 2 cannons, 2 units of Slayers, one of which are Giant Slayers, the other which are the Dragonback Slayers. We've got we've got 4 units of Thunderers, a unit of the Scolder Guard, the Regiment of Renowned Iron Drakes, who are super cool looking. We've also got 5 units of Miners, one of which is the Ekrund Miners. Miners with blasting charges, I should say. And then we've got a single unit of Dwarf Warriors. So a very, very wide Dwarf army. Pretty similar to what Turin won with a few weeks back, though it does have quite a bit heavier of a range contingent at the sacrifice of elite infantry. So there's no Longbeards. There's 2 units of Dwarf Warriors. There's just there's just a lot of basic infantry trying to secure the army. And for characters, the only thing we've got is a naked Dwarf Lord. He's got no special items. So the Dwarves went pretty heavy in the range game with a lot of cannons and stuff. Meanwhile, over here on the Empire side, we've got what looks like 4 units of Reiksguard, 2 units of crossbows, a Life Wizard with Regrowth and Earthblood, unit of Great Swords, 5 units of Swordsmen with a lot of chevrons. It looks like 3 chevrons on every unit. And the Sigmar Sons. And then we've got Karl Franz on Deathclaw with both of his melee weapons. Which, that still bothers the crumb out of me that he can equip both of those at the same time. So already, the cannons opened up a very devastating volley on the Reiksguard, shaving off about 25% of their health and dropping 13 models out of 45. So that's over 25% of the unit dead already. And here we have more shots coming in, and ooh, they're getting some really nice flank shots. Ooh, that cannonball just stopped short. So this unit is only like 4 guys away, or no, about 5 guys away from being at half health. So the good news is, so far the Dwarves have only focused on 1 unit. I'm not sure if the Dwarves are going to try and eradicate this 1 unit, or if they're going to seek to spread the love a little bit. But see, this is a really dangerous trap a lot of people fall into. You see how that 1 cannonball literally just killed 10 guys? You never want to present your flank to a cannon. You always, always, always want to keep your front facing it. Wait for it to fire. After it shoots 3 shots, then you can present your flank to maneuver, but then face your front again as quickly as possible. Here we do see, though, that the Reichsguard are running around and starting to ping a lot of these minor units. I'm guessing they're trying to get them to spend their blasting charges, or maybe just looking to do some easy damage. But the blasting charges haven't been fired yet, and here we get a really nice volley on the Karl Franz, doing at least 1,000 health, it looks like. Yeah, almost right on the dot, about 900 health. But the Reichsguard have managed to pretty much get into the back line. They're starting to run around trying to get into the Thunderers, but the Thunderers are very well spread out, so that they'll be able to crossfire each other very, very effectively. Meanwhile, the front lines have met. Unfortunately, the Empire doesn't really have a superior front line. They have a lot of swordsmen, which swordsmen will probably beat miners, but probably not dwarf warriors. But the blasting charges will definitely turn those scuffles in favor of the dwarf miners. But even in these warriors versus swordsmen fights, these fights are going to last a very long time. Meanwhile, in the back, we do see Karl Franz dive in on this cannon here as the Thunderers in the back keep eviscerating all the different Reichsguard units. Things are looking pretty rough from a perspective of the Empire. There's just what's the word I'm looking for? Not quadro, but the quartlet, whatever, of Thunderers is such a devastating setup. Like, we've seen it time and time again over the last 3 weeks, and it's just been really, really effective every single time it's shown up. And now Karl Franz has been pretty much broken off. Like, he'll rally because his leadership's at 5, so more than likely he'll come back. But the only way he's going to get enough leadership to actually be useful in this game is if he flies directly to the Life Wizard and gets an overcast regrowth. But that's assuming a cannon doesn't just turn and pop him in the back of the head. Meanwhile, we see the Cav running around trying to get some work done. The crossbows really don't have any super great targets. Miners aren't very heavily armored, so you can actually do some okay damage to them, but it's not going to be anything crazy. We do see the Dragonback Slayers have taken some decent damage from the crossbows, but unfortunately Slayers do have bronze shields, so they are able to deflect a fair amount of missile fire from the front, and the Dragonback Slayers also have physical resistance, so they're pretty good against small arm fire. Meanwhile, the Greatswords have managed to get into the Dwarf army and are cleaving their way through the front line pretty easily, but now they're in range of the Skolder Guard, who will do a really good job of just killing these guys in just these devastating explosions of steam. Yeah, look at that. That's just... they're already getting a ton of kills on a really, really valuable unit. Here we see Karl Franz does ride back in and helps the Dwarves push through another, or the Empire push through another portion of the Dwarf army. But there's still so much shooting online. There's still a lot of cannons firing at Franz. He needs, like, a overcast regrowth right now, like this instant. If he doesn't get it in about 2 seconds, there's going to be a cannonball that's going to dunk him on the head and kill him. We see here that he's managing to kind of avoid the cannons as they're all repositioning, trying to get on him. But this firing squad's on him now, and in comes in the volley, and that is going to be a shatter for Franz. And with Franz gone, the Empire is going to follow suit and shatter. So that's going to be a pretty quick victory for the Dwarves. Definitely a something we've seen a lot of this week and last week is that Dwarves that have 4 Thunderers spread out enough are very, very, very difficult to get back into, because you can't just rely on like heavy cav, because the cav just gets torn apart. You know, Dwarves are not particularly fast, but with Thunderers and cannons, they dictate the speed of the battle, and they're like, nope, you're gonna meet me where I want to be, where I want to fight. So yeah, that's going to be a very straightforward win for the Dwarves. This is a very hard list to beat. We'll have to see if one of the other forces is capable of trumping it. So unfortunately, the Empire did not start off with the best opening there, but maybe they'll get vengeance later today. Doesn't look like there's a spectator slot here. All right, so for game 2, oh, real quick, let's go ahead and update the score sheet here. So a really good game by both players. A move hacker, or I think his Steam name right now is Vindictive Glare or something. But he will be moving on to the semifinals. And now we've got King of the Dead, who's returning player. He's played in previous weeks, though we haven't seen him in probably the last 3 or 4 weeks, versus Exploding Hamster, who we also have not seen since the first week, I believe. So we'll have to see how this matchup's going to go. Let me check in on them real quick. Game is open. Okay. Okay. Still no spectator slot. Need a spec slot. Please. Alright, well hopefully we will get King of the Dead in here in just a moment. And we will be good to go. Alright, and we've got more dwarves up on the table here. Let me switch this back. And this time we're going to have dwarves versus Norsca, of all things. I'm already predicting this is going to be a pretty hard battle for Norsca, more than likely. Pretty sure it's Norsca. Let me double check the list that was sent in. Yep. Alright. And with this, we are off to game 2, where we're going to have the dwarves facing off against Norsca this time. So we're going to see if the evil humans from the north can step up where the weak southerners failed. Dave. Yeah, that's what I need. I need to find out where all the ladies who want to hear Warhammer stories hang out at. Yeah, redo that was a super hard list to beat. I mean, I feel like I'm a very, very competent player at this game, and I feel like I'm really good with Lizardmen. And I mean, that quadruple, that's the word I was looking for. That quadruple Thunderer build is just, it's so brutal. It is so brutal. Dwarves are very, very good right now at just spacing out their line into kind of a really spaced out format, and just the moment you try and get in, you have people just cross shooting at each other. Just convert? I don't think that's how that works, Misha. Hell's my fan. Still a piece of garbage. Probably gonna buy a new one today or tomorrow. Gonna buy and install a new one. But I was talking with my old man, and we're gonna get a much nicer one that's like way bigger, so it'll be much better. Hope you're all doing well. I apologize if some of y'all were maybe watching Indie Pride's stream and ended up having to settle for one or the other. I totally forgot that he streams on Saturdays now for Shogun, because I do my best to try and not stream over people. I even made sure that, you know, our stream today would be late enough that the other Warhammer tournaments that typically take place on Saturday would be over. But, you know, can't all be winners. But, you know, it's Shogun. Who cares? Shogun. Alright. So, let's start with the Dwarves again. We've got 3 units of Bugman's Rangers. Just a really powerhouse group of range firepower here. We've also got 2 units of Thunderers and 2 units of Quarrelers. No, it is 3 units of Thunderers. So Exploding Hamster has just brought an assload of ranged infantry. Then we have 2 units of Miners, 2 Slayers, one of which is the Dragonback Slayers, and the other one has triple Chevrons. And then we've got a single cannon to try to force the opponent to come to him, 2 Gyrocopters with steam guns, which will be fairly good against Norsca. And then we've got Belagar Ironhammer here, though he's completely naked. He doesn't have any abilities or items. And we've got a Runesmith here who purely has Rune of Wrath and Ruin and the Hammer of Karakdraz. Meanwhile, over on the Norscan side, we've got 5 units of Marauders, one of which is the Icehorn Marauders, who will do really, really well in this matchup. We've also got 2 units of Hunters with Javelins, who don't really have a super big home in this matchup, but they do enough damage that they can easily like put the hurt on Miners, or even some of the units that don't have shields, like actually they all have shields, don't they? Well, you know what? They'll be really helpful against the Copters, actually. They'll be super good against the Copters, especially with their anti-large. We also have 2 units of Marauder Spearmen, just here to provide some pretty straightforward anti-large. Then we have 2 units of Skin Wolves, who do have pretty good anti-large, but unfortunately they don't have a ton in the way of armor piercing, so they could struggle against the Dwarves. Well, 21 armor piercing is not bad, but the nice thing for them is that there's no heavily armored Dwarf infantry, so they'll be able to rip their way through a lot of this pretty easy as long as they can survive the range fire. And then for the big boy, we've got a single Feral Mammoth, and then Throg, the King of the Trolls, with no items, just his good old regen, and then a Death Sorcerer with Spirit Leech and Fate of Vienna. So the game is off. I'm not sure how this is going to go. The hordes of Marauders are really good for this matchup. They all have bronze shields and they're really cheap infantry that are very effective. So they're going to be able to pull their weight against all of this just mass ranged infantry. As long as the Dwarves aren't able to dictate the pace of the engagement, the Marauders should be more than well equipped to kind of just surge forward and push their way through. These steam guns, though, are very, very effective against low armored infantry, so the Marauders don't want to take too long. If they don't get engaged fast enough, these steam guns can actually do a ton of damage because it's an explosion-based projectile, so that means that it doesn't allow missile block chance. But I totally missed the Beasts of Tashnar over here in a sneaky deployment, which they're not with their Norscan Warhammer brothers over there, but this is the Regiment of Renown with the anti-large bonus. But they actually managed to completely strip the Chaos Cannon, or the Dwarf Cannon, offline, and are coming in here to finish off their meal, making sure to remember that there's starving kids in Africa and to finish what's on your plate. With that, the cannon is shattered. So with the Dwarf Cannon shattered, that means the Dwarves have to engage as well as Norsca. I mean, the two forces now have to meet both as attackers. So that's a brilliant strategy because it means the Dwarves can't just sit back and turtle. I'll wait for a little bit, but like they're both going to have to be considered attackers. Right now, Norsca is being fairly aggressive with these Warhounds, which is allowing the Dwarves to basically count as attacking for the moment. But even then, that cannon being offline basically means that the Mammoth is going to be harder to deal with, and these Skin Wolves are going to be a lot harder to deal with. That being said, we did see a really good volley in for those Thunderers, but these Skin Wolves get right to the point coming in on these Bugman Rangers. Bugman Rangers are pretty good fighters, though, so they should be... Oh, there's a second Feral Mammoth! I totally, like, missed a portion of the army. So there are 2 Mammoths and 2 Warhound units, one of which was a Regiment of Renown. Now I got it. So with the Mammoth, these Skin Wolves are more than capable of plowing through this flank here, so it's going to get absolutely deleted and probably terrified off. Meanwhile, we see the guns have opened fire into the Icehorn Marauders and did manage to deal a fair amount of damage, but these guys are, they are rank 9, so they have very, very high leadership, and if they can get into combat and stay in combat, they'll activate their Berserk bonus, and it will allow them to just stick around forever. Here we do see that Belagar took a ton of damage and a little personal spat he had with Throg, but Throg got a bunch of bullets to the face in answer and took quite a bit of damage. That being said, it looks like the Death Sorcerer is being chased by Belegar, who will be able to beat on him, but the Death Sorcerer is quite a bit faster than Belegar. 3 faster, which is fast enough to get away. Throg does fall back to the forest to heal after eating a ton of bullets, and this flank of the Dawi line has been, Dawi line is pretty much collapsed and is no longer going to be of any use. But the Dwarves still have a really solid pocket here of 2 Thunderers and a unit of Bugmans. So this unit of Bugmans, who did a lot of firing into those wolves we saw earlier, are almost out of ammo. The Skin Wolves do run in here against these Thunderers, but they're quickly responded to with Slayers, who are perfect for the job of cutting them up. Meanwhile, we do see that the Runesmith gets isolated and starts getting absolutely pounded on by Throg, who's broken him, kicks him in the back for good measure, and he is shattered. That's really, really good for Norsca, because Rune of Wrath and Ruin is magic damage, so it's one of the only ways the Dwarves can get around the Berserk bonus that all the Marauders are starting to get for being in combat. And the Dwarf only had time to probably pop his bonus once or twice. So things are looking really, really good for the Northmen of Chaos. Here we see Belegar's getting run over by the Mammoth, and he does break. It's very, very unlikely he'll recover, as his leadership is super low. All these Javelins are doing a really good job of keeping the Gyrocopters honest and keeping them at a pretty good distance, because the Javelins have that really nice super anti-large, and they can easily pincushion those things out of the air. The Javelins are starting to counterfire into Thunderers, which they're not really going to do anything there, but, you know, at this point it's just providing a leadership debuff. And we do see the Thunderers opening up into the Mammoth, but the Mammoth has so much health that a full barrage from Thunderers... The thing about Thunderers is they do a ton of damage to most units because they have very, very high armor piercing. But when you don't have any armor, but you have well over 10,000 health, really high AP damage is like, whatever. Like, pfft. So because of that, the Norskins managed to just completely waddle their way over the Dwarves, and that really heavily shielded front line and the double Mammoth, double Skin Wolf build was more than maneuverable enough to overwhelm the Dwarves, and there's some really nice Spirit Leeches and Javelins managed to deal with the Gyrocopters, and then Fate of Biunas just dropped the Slayers like a complete haymaker. So with that, King of the Dead leading the Northmen to victory, and manages to deal Exploding Hamster out of the tournament in the first round, which Exploding Hamster is a very good player. If you haven't, you should definitely go check. I have a playlist of all of the Challenge of the Old One tournaments streams. If you haven't, you should go back and watch the first one. Exploding Hamster played Skaven, and he played crazy good. So with that, Exploding Hamster's Dwarves have been rather thoroughly defeated. It seems like he just went a little too ham on the range, and the things that were really hoping to give him an advantage, like the cannon and the Gyrocopters, just through pure sheer dumb luck happened to be answered by King of the Dead's list, and he was able to very effectively neuter all of the Dwarves' big responses. That early cannon catch was beautiful. It's perfect. Alright, let's move on to Game 3. Here we've got Pippington with his Lizardmen up against Megafish, who will be leading the Empire, who are going to hopefully try and claim some sweet, sweet revenge after the Emperor was struck down by the cruel Dawi. Let's move King of the Dead up here. His name's a little too big, but that's okay. Alright, so Lizardmen versus Empire. A really fun matchup. Personally, I despise this matchup when I play Lizardmen. I think Empire are my least favorite army to fight when I play Lizards. If I had to pick one. Most armies I feel pretty good against. But, you know what? No, I'd say Warriors of Chaos are my least favorite to play against with Lizardmen. But Empire are a close second. I feel like I can handle every other race pretty easily, but... Don't forget to change the screen back. Thank you. This is why we read chat. All right, let's start with Pippington, who's bringing my personal favorite, the Lizardmen, into battle. He's got a very small, very elite army. We've got 2 units of Temple Guard, 3 units of Source Warriors with, 2 units of Source Warriors with shields, 1 without, 2 units of Chameleon Skinks. Then we have a Feral Carnosaur, Lord Mazdamundi on Zlak with Net's Harmonic Convergence Apotheosis, and he does not have Ruination of Cities. Isn't that interesting? And then we have a Skink Priest of Beasts who has Transformation of Caden for those sweet Manticore summons. Meanwhile, over on the Empire side, we have a much more rounded force with 3 units of Spearmen with shields that have double chevrons each, acting as a defensive line. We've got the Hammer of the Witches, which is really solid for dealing with really powerful units. We've also got Sigmar's Sons and the Silver Bullets. A lot of regiments of renown showing up to this party. We've also got the Altdorf Griffites, who are an excellent anti-large heavy cap, monstrous cav unit. We've got a unit of Outriders with grenade launchers who specialize in dealing with low armored packed infantry. Then we've got 2 units of greatswords, 1 more unit of handgunners, a light wizard with Shim's Burning Gaze, Banishment, and Nets. And then we've got Boris Toddbringer. We've got effing Toddy, and he's got a lot of his really nasty abilities like Crush the Weak. He's got everything, it looks like, Foe Seeker and Deadly Onslaught. So I think this is going to be pretty difficult for the Lizardmen. This is a very, very elite army, and that Hammer of the Witches is going to be a bitch to deal with. That thing is that's gonna lay a whooping on the lizards. They're gonna need to take that thing offline as quickly as possible. Which the deployment is looking rather concerning for the poor lizards. I'm honestly a little surprised Pippington isn't trying to use the forest that comes out of his deployment zone, because that would allow him to kind of breach this gap with taking minimal damage. But once again, he doesn't know what's over here. He only knows he's fighting Empire, and he didn't know that until like a minute ago. Oh, you're right. He does not have the Cloak of Ulrich. That's true. Who said that? Undertaker? Yeah, that's true. Alright, and we're off. So the armies have sighted each other. The Lizardmen are probably keenly aware that they need to try and approach as carefully as possible. They're probably going to want to take their good old sweet time and march, or slowly march to this end of the hill, while the Chameleon Skinks hopefully can maybe get around the back. But of course, they're only going to have until Boris sights them. Meanwhile, the Empire does have a very nice deployment over here. He kind of lucked that he got this side and not this side. We do see the Outriders did pop into the forest here, but it looks like the Lizardmen are already responding with the Chameleon Skinks to deal with the Outriders with grenade launchers, which is good, because although Saurus, I wouldn't say they're lightly armored, but with only 60 armor, Saurus are fairly vulnerable to grenade launchers. If those manage to sneak up behind them and start launching into them, they can actually do a pretty reasonable amount of damage. So here we see the Hammer of the Witches has unleashed its initial volley, and it manages to drop 4 Temple Guard in the first shot, and total whiff. So, pretty nice juke there from Pippington. Looks like he did that on purpose. It's always hard to tell if a juke is on purpose or accident, in my opinion. Like, if it's not a Flying Lord, just because the units kind of react so slowly a lot of the time. But the Lizardmen have almost finished getting their battle line ready. Here we see a couple more Temple Guard get dropped. They've lost 9 models now between 2 volleys, which isn't a terrible exchange for the Lizardmen. 9 models out of 75 for 2 full cannon allotments is not terrible. Over here, we do see the grenade launchers have started launching into the Chameleon Skinks, but Chameleon Skinks are skirmishers, so they're not densely packed, and they also have huge missile resistance. So they're just going to cackle at that. That's not even going to remotely phase them. We do see the Chameleon Skinks entering the forest, pursuing the Outriders, who they managed to kill 1 of, but did some pretty substantial HP damage in the 1 or 2 volleys they managed to fire off. Meanwhile, the Skink Priest of Beasts... Oh, and he's on a regular Stegodon, so he does have the giant bolt thrower. So it looks like he fired a shot over there at Boris, but it looks like it unfortunately didn't quite connect. We see Mazdamundi is cautiously kind of hanging out in the back. He does need to be careful, though, that Boris doesn't just swoop in and jump on him. Boris can beat Mazdamundi in a fight thanks to his Crush the Weak and his regeneration. Meanwhile, we see shots are continuing to ring out. The Hammer of the Witches has aimed itself at Lord Mazdamundi and has taken off a pretty serious chunk of health, so he probably needs to start using Apotheosis on himself. I think we saw Apotheosis earlier go off on the Skink Priest of Beasts, but the Skink Priest has summoned a Manticore, and since it's a summoned unit, it does immediately need to get to work. And I'm assuming he's either going to use it to try and tangle up Boris, or he's probably just going to throw it at the Hammer of the Witches. But unfortunately, it barely gets anywhere before it rampages and just immediately dives into a unit of Spearmen and Outriders. But we do see a Cold-Blooded go down on it, which is a really nice feature that the Lizardmen have exclusive access to, is being able to counter Rampage. And it's basically just an unbreakable unit now. So it does manage to get out of there, but Boris is hotly pursuing it. We do see double banishments go down, one from the Light Wizard and one from the Slann. The Light Wizard one manages to do quite a bit of damage to a unit of Saurus, but the one that Mazdamundi dropped responded very nicely and cut a unit of handgunners in half. We do see the Manticore falling back a fair bit here, just wanting to get some distance between him and Boris. He's circling around, and you can already tell he's got an order to go take out the Hammer of the Witches ASAP. We do see Boris Todbringer dive down here, and it looks like he went after the Skink Priest of Beasts, but the Skink Priest is wasting no time. Looks like summoning another Manticore. Meanwhile, Mazdamundi has taken a ton of damage from the Hammer of Witches. That thing needs to be taken offline, and the Silver Bullets and the other handgunners are just crossfiring into Mazdamundi. He does have net on him, so he can't move. Here, the Royal Altar of Griffites did run in on the Skink Priest to try and take him down, but the Pharaoh Carnosaur responded, and the Pharaoh Carnosaur will absolutely annihilate these Royal Altar of Griffites, especially when being supported by Temple Guard. And they have gone ahead and broken. Half the unit is dead, and here the double Manticores do dive into the Hammer of Witches and are starting to cause a lot of problems. Well, it looks like one of them went into the handgunners, who have been broken or getting off the field now. Things are looking very, very good for the Lizardmen. They have gotten into the back line of the Empire, and the Empire doesn't have any serious anti-large answers. The only thing they have to deal with anti-large are the Royal Altar of Griffites and handguns. But all of those things have pretty much been taken offline by the soaring around Manticores. And although Mazdamundi is weak, he can just spam healing on himself. And thanks to the fact that he has his Sunburst standard, he's fairly tanky and difficult to kill, even if you're spamming magic missiles and other things of the sort on him. We do see the Hammer of Witches here does turn to try and get a shot into him, but Mazdamundi has noticed their existence and comes plowing in to deal with them. The Manticores, who are unbreakable, especially when they're being supported by Cold-Blooded to make sure they don't rampage, are doing an excellent job at just continually chasing units around. We do have a unit of Temple Guard here in the back, kind of wandering after the Royal Altar of Griffites, though the odds of them catching them are very, very low. Here, the Boris is being hunted by these Chameleon Skinks, and they are just making it absolutely rain poison darts up above, and he's taking so much damage. He has 85 armor, but that's just so many little bolts just coming right up to his face. He does dive into the center of the unit, but they also have poison melee attacks, and they're not total slouches in combat. Well, they'll break and run eventually, but they'll do quite a bit of damage to him in the meantime. The Light Wizard still is holding on, and as the Royal Altar of Griffites rally to attack Lord Mazdamundi, they need to kill him as quickly as possible. We do see some Shim Burning Gazes coming into the Skink Priest, but Shim's Burning Gaze doesn't do a ton of armor-piercing damage unless you overcast it, because just due to the sheer amount of missiles it'll fire off. So it's kind of a joke against the Slann. They'll be able to almost completely shrug it off. And here we see the Carnosaur. Looks like he was heading for the Light Wizard, but changed his mind. But Boris is in the wrong house now. That Carnosaur is about to eat him for breakfast, especially since he's getting poison darted, so his movement speed is going to go in the trash can. Here we see the Light Wizard is pursuing after Mazdamundi, which normally the Mazdamundi could easily turn around and finish it off, but Mazdamundi is running through friendly troops, so he doesn't really need to bother. He's got Saurus and Temple Guard coming in here that is going to be able to absolutely trounce the Empire Heavy Cav. The Empire has rallied most of their infantry in the back here, and if they can get a reorganized effort to come and kill Mazdamundi, they might have a chance to turn things around. But Boris gets caught in a dinosaur sandwich here between the horns of a Stegodon, the teeth of a Carnosaur, and down he goes. Boris and his unnamed Griffin are dead, and with the collapse of their general, the Empire decides, nope, it is not our day, and they are out of here. Oh, we're getting bad lag on the stream? Oh no. You might try refreshing the page, chat. Yeah, sorry guys. There was no lag on my end, so that had to have been my that had to have been OBS. Was everybody getting bad lag? Yeah, I looked over at my stream and it looked like it was a little laggy, but last match had a lot of buffering issues. Yeah, I'm watching it now. Oh no, let me take a look at OBS here real quick. It says my connection's good. Could just be YouTube, guys. I don't know, that's the first time that's happened in all the weeks we've been doing this. I'm gonna go ahead and maybe like literally turn off the stream for like half a second. Once this battle. Yeah, I'll turn it off and on real quick. Okay, the battle's ended, so I'm gonna go ahead and start the stream. All right, let's see if that reboot fixed it. Yeah, it's like super delayed too. Okay, I'm gonna turn it off for like a good couple seconds. All right, let's see if completely rebooting it fixes it. All right. We'll try it like this. Hopefully, like, I'm looking at all my stuff, guys. I'm not having any issues on my end. I mean, I've got the stream pulled up, and it's back synced up with me now. So I'm not sure what caused that. The game was fine. Sorry about that, guys. It's lame. But OBS was looking good. I didn't have any drop frames or anything, so it had to have been something between OBS and YouTube. I don't know what the deal was. All right, and for the last game in the prelims today, we've got Alien Ambassador versus Dosict with a rematch of Dwarves versus Norsca. So we're going to have to see if the Dwarves will be able to turn it around this time. Like I said, we had a ton of repeat factions this week. Or today. casting too close to the polar gates. Well, I live in the, like, almost... I live closer to the equator than most of the United States, so I doubt that. I wish we had a smidge of that polar weather that they're having up north. Like, I don't want all the crazy bullshit they're having, but if we could take, like, minus 20 degrees from them and give them that 20 degrees back, I would be totally cool with that exchange. Because it's like 60 here today. Yeah, it's 60, but it's so humid it feels like it's 70. It's hot. I would love for us to trade some temperatures with the Northerners right now. Anyway, so let's go ahead and start with the Dwarves, because that's just what we've been doing today. So we've got a pretty elite force here. We've got both Norgrimling's Ironbreakers and the Peak Gate Guard. Then we've got the Dragonback Slayers and the Grumbling Guards. We've got a lot of regiments of renown there. We've got 2 units of regular Slayers with a single chevron, 2 units of Dwarf Warriors. We've got a Rune Lord here with Rune of Wrath and Ruin and Rune of Oath and Steel. Oh no, Master Rune of Grugni. Okay, and then Rune of Hearth and Home. So we've got basically double Wrath and Ruin. And then we've got 2 cannons. And I think that's everything. No, looks like there's... Okay, so there's 4 units of Dwarf Warriors total. Meanwhile, over on the Norscan side of things, we've got another 5 units of Marauders. Then we've got 2 units of Marauder Berserkers, 2 units of Marauder Champions. We've got Wulfric the Wanderer with his full kit of abilities, including his boat. We've also got a Death Shaman Sorcerer on a horse with Fate of Buna and Spirit Leech. Then we've got a unit of Skinwolves, a unit of Norscan Ice Trolls, 2 units of Marauder Hunters with Javelins, and 3 units of Marauder Hunter with Javelins, and 2 units of Norscan Warhounds. And this time I did not miss a sneaky unit in the back. And we see the Dwarves are doing a pretty classic Dwarven geometry, but where the Dwarf armies we saw earlier today were very, very heavy on range, this is almost a pure elite melee army backed up with double cannons. So we'll have to see if a minimal range approach ends up working out for the Dwarves or not. Excuse me. So, both sides are advancing. The Dwarves are kind of coming out of their corner a little bit because they're a little too far away, even in their precious corner camp. Here it looks like they have gotten fully in range of some of the Norscan armies, so the Norskins are definitely going to want to hustle as quick as they can to this front line. The Norskins do have a pretty wide army. It should be pretty easy, even with the double cannons, to just kind of easily just go around the sides, engage the Slayers in combat with the regular Marauders, and then use like the Warhounds to slip in the cracks, deal and take care of the cannons. The Dwarves are going to have to play flawlessly, and that they're going to need their cannons to focus down the most dangerous targets. Like right now, I would probably be firing my cannons at Wulfric, the Trolls, or the Shaman Sorcerer, personally. Those are probably the biggest threats coming towards them. I mean, the Skinwolves, they're fast and they have regen, but they don't have that significant of armor piercing compared to like the Ice Trolls. And there's a lot of really heavy-duty units sitting back here. We do see that the Hounds are starting to come around the flanks along with the Skinwolves, and we have the first Fate of Buna dropping down here on Norgrimling's Ironbreakers, which Dwarves do have a fair amount of magic resist, so they're going to be able to negate a pretty serious amount of the damage, but it's still a pretty powerful spell, so it looks like they'll probably take about 1,500 health and damage, at least, if not 2,000. Oh, really nice boat in conjunction there. Manages to tear up a lot of the Dwarf Warriors and does a pretty good smattering of damage on Norgrimling's Ironbreakers, who haven't lost any models yet, mind you, but they have lost about 3,000 health already. So their blasting charges do pretty minimal amounts of damage. The cannons are doing what they can to delay and deal damage to the Ice Trolls, which is great. Here, though, we see that the Marauders are coming around the side and starting to engage all the different Slayer units, and the Norscan Warhounds are just looking for a sweet, buttery entrance. We do see a Master Rune of Wrath and Rune go down on these Marauders back here. The Warhounds over here do jump into the side of the Slayers and look like they're trying to do some damage. We see another Rune of Wrath and Rune go down on these Hounds, which is going to slow them down enough that these Slayers will be able to catch them and probably break them before they do anything too serious to the cannons. So far, the Dwarven defense of the cannons is looking really solid. The Dwarves need to bring more units, or the Norskins need to bring more units around the side if they're going to seriously try and get back here and shut these things down. Which they need to. These cannons can't be allowed to stay up too long, or else they're going to be able to get their money's worth. Here we do see that all these little fast-moving units have been dealt with, but now we've got a unit of Marauder Champions and Marauder Berserkers coming back on the Slayers, and the Champions in particular are going to dumpster the Slayers. They have really nice armor, really high melee defense. They are a perfect counter to the Slayers, and will be pretty good at chopping them up. Meanwhile, Wulfric, the Eternal Challenger, has gotten into the back line and popped Hunter of Champions on the Rune Lord. And then him and the Death Sorcerer have already started to kind of pile drive him. And they're going to absolutely tear these two apart. The Dwarves need to get some kind of unit back here to offer some support. Here we see the first of the cannons is being taken offline by the Marauder Champions, who have gotten into the back line. And it looks like one of these Warhound units might respond, but the Dwarf crew do expertly drop their cannons and start to run for the hills while the Dragonback Slayers come charging in. But while they're dealing with one Norscan unit, a whole other one's coming in from another side. Over here, we do see that Wulfric is taking a fair amount of damage in his battle with these two Dwarf characters, and he's now getting attacked in the rear by the Grumbling Guard, who have really good stats, solid armor piercing, and will be able to mess him up considerably. Things aren't looking super great for Norsca right now. The Dwarves have done a really good job of protecting their cannons, just very carefully but eloquently dealing with each threat that comes back here one at a time. That being said, the Dwarves are stretched mightily thin, and they need to be very careful. If Wulfric lives long enough to get another ship cast, he could potentially do a ton of damage to this line, and these Trolls are going to continue to be a pretty serious problem. Though the Peak Gate Guard are doing really, really well. They haven't lost that much health, and they are smashing the Norskins to bits. They even have magical attacks, so even if the Norskins are getting their physical resistance buff, they're not going to care. The Peak Gate Guard are going to smash right through it. The Javelins don't really have a ton of great places to put their stuff, but they're doing okay. That being said, the balance of power is swinging pretty heavily against the Dwarves. Wulfric here is starting to look a little overburdened here with the Grumbling Guard. The Norskins do need to get in support to support Wulfric, because if Wulfric dies, the balance of power could start to swing against them, especially with how much of the Norscan army is starting to break due to leadership issues. And there you can see the balance of power is crawling back towards the center. Wulfric needs to be so careful right now. A huge portion of the army does break, and the Shaman Sorcerer has taken a ton of damage from the Peak Gate Guard, and he's also broken and immediately starting to fall back. And it looks like he's not even going to make it out. Looks like he's probably going to get popped with a hammer here by one of these brave Dawi, and he's going to go down probably here in half a second. Another cast does go off of the boat. It does some damage, but not a ton. Wulfric did manage to slip away from the Grumbling Guard, but his health is so low, and he should not be engaging the Peak Gate Guard alone. He is surrounded by unfriendly faces, and they are going to make an absolute mockery out of his taunts. Like, he's already down to only 300 health. His Shaman Sorcerer is completely shattered, so he is the only thing holding this Norscan army together. The Norskins have an advantage in pure numbers, but their leadership structure needs to stay out of the fight. They just need to stay safe while the rest of the Norscan army continues to rally and come in an unstoppable tide. I think Dosic is being way too aggressive right now with his leadership, and getting them involved in fights they just don't need to be involved in. He needs to keep them safe. It's amazing, quite frankly, that Wulfric hasn't shattered with his 110 health. He keeps coming in here wanting to finish off this Rune Lord, but it's really not worth it. It would be a lot better to kind of keep him safe and out of the way, because if he dies, like, he's gonna just lose control of a lot of his army. That being said, the Rune Lord is getting very, very low on health. He only has about 500 left, and Wulfric is being heavily supported by local troops. But it looks like he just shattered or died I'm not. It looks like he died. It looks like the runesmith managed to slap him in the back of the head. And sure enough, the moment Wulfric went down, the balance of power immediately starts to crawl up in the dwarves' favor. Both of the cannons are back online, firing at the Norscan units that are too far away from the engagement, and the significant leadership penalty that's applied from taking damage from a siege weapon is going to do a ton of damage to their morale overall. There's no leadership structure holding the Norscans together now, and even though they have the dwarves wildly outnumbered, they just don't have anybody that's going to allow them to get involved in a melee and keep their leadership consistently high. I think the Norscans are just way too aggressive, and sure enough, without a leader to bind them together, they have shattered. Alright, great game there. Norsca played hyper-aggressive, and it very nearly paid off. I think, really, the only thing that screwed Norsca in that fight was that the Shaman Sorcerer and Wulfric just got a little too aggressive and got surrounded by units that could just start wailing on them. Wulfric the Wanderer got surrounded by the Grumbling Guard, and they managed to kind of pick him apart, and that Shaman Sorcerer got a little too close to the very, very nasty Peak Gate Guard. The Peak Gate Guard were just having a hell of a time beating the brakes off this Norscan army. So, really good game from both players. It was a solid attempt. It was a solid attempt. So, we've got 2 dwarves now in the semifinals, a Norscan army, and a... Oh, I don't have connection to Steam. Oh, wait, nope, there it is. Now it's back. What in the world is going on today? There we go. That was weird. Alright. Let me go ahead and update the score sheet. Might have to close the game and reopen it. That's okay, though. Alright, so we had Pippington and his Lizardmen come out on top over Megafish. And then Alien managed to narrowly defeat one of my precious mods here on YouTube, Dosict. So these are the semifinals, and I'm going to go ahead and reboot the game. Oh, wait, no, it's fine. It's fine. People just have to get stuff. Well, you know, let's go ahead and shut it down and turn it back on just to be safe. Can't hurt to be a little over careful, right? Oh, you ever stretch and like the bone structure right here, like everything pops back into place? You're just like, oh, like it's a good feeling, but you played really well, Dosict. I honestly think you had it. I think you just got I think you got a little too gung ho with your characters. I think outside of that, though, you had a really good situation. I need to send them the matchups for the semis. They're probably sitting there wondering what the hell the maps are. All right, so we've got a Move Hacker versus King of the Dead, and they will be fighting at the excavation site. And then Pippington will be fighting Alien on Shimmer Sword. Alright, so we'll give them a minute to get set up just because Steam went... Because it seems like everything that could try and go wrong with the stream today is. Why is nobody using organ guns? I can't tell you. I don't know. I mean, they're... yes, I do. They're very expensive. You know, if a cannon goes offline, it's not that hard to get really good It's not very difficult to get good value out of a cannon. It has super long range. It can one-shot monstrous creatures and infantry. You know, it doesn't just do a lot of damage. It kills the models it hits. And it does a ton of damage to monstrous units. And if it gets taken offline, because its range is so long, you've probably gotten your value out of it. Organ guns, on the other hand, have a very, very short range and in comparison, and it is so easy, especially for how expensive they are. It's so hard to protect them and keep them firing consistently. So, I mean, that's a super spooky nightmare. Let me see how our semifinalists are doing. I think I have, yeah, I have King of the Dead on Steam, so I should know the instant he's up. I see the second one, but I don't see the first one. Hamster. Do I think Bone Ripper should be anti-large? No. It depends on the version of Bone Ripper they go with. Personally, I'm hoping we get the End Times version, the one that has 4 arms and it has 2 warp fire. And I hope they do a hybrid where 2 of its arms are warp fire braziers, or warpstone braziers, and 2 of them are warp flame throwers. So it has like a short range like flamethrower attack, and then it also has the ability to like mess people up in close combat. I wouldn't have it be anti-large or anti-infantry. I would just have it do high armor piercing and just be like really have a ton of health. Because the you have to remember that Dave, the Bone Ripper that you're talking about, who was bizarrely powerful, that was probably the strongest Bone Ripper besides the End Times one. But you have to remember that one died at the end of that book. Uh-oh. Steam, stop! Stop it! I just want to do my tourney. Another thing to keep in mind for organ guns, guys, and a reason you might not see them super often, is you have to remember that when you take something like organ guns, you're expressly praying that your opponent brings something worth targeting. You know, if you bring an organ gun and your opponent shows up with like frickin' and they show up with like Skaven. You know, you're gonna be kind of sitting there just like, what are you gonna do? Alright, so we've got a rematch here of Norsca versus Dwarves for the 3rd time today. Because we had 3 Dwarf players and 2 Norsca players. So this represents over 50% of the player pool today. Which, remember, none of the players communicated with each other about what armies they were going to bring. They just picked what they wanted. So that's just how the ball dropped today. How do I think Jezzail should work? Very, very similar to the Vampire Coast deck droppers. Though I think they should be the longest range guns in the game, but they should have silver shields, if not gold shields, because they have a giant shield in front that blocks missile fire. I would say like they should be like deck gunners, but instead of unbreakable and causing fear due to being zombies, they should instead have silver or gold shields to have like really high missile resistance, so that they're like super effective at trading with enemy shooting stuff. Oh, deck droppers? I meant deck gunners. Whatever, Skaven could totally invent deck droppers. Flying rats that carry more rats. Alright, so for anyone who missed these armies earlier, I'll go over them again real quick. For the Dwarves, we've got 5 units of miners with blasting charges, one of which is Ekron's miners. We've got 2 units of Slayers, one of which is the Dragback Slayers, one of which is Giant Slayers. We've got 3 units of Dwarf Warriors, 4 units of Thunderers, a unit of the Skulder Guard, who are the Regiment of Renowned Iron Drakes, and one of my favorite regiments of renown in the game. We've also got 2 cannons and a single Dwarf Lord who's totally naked. He's just there to make sure that everybody doesn't break and run away. Meanwhile, over here on the Norscan side, we've got 5 units of Marauders, one of which is the Icehorn Marauders. And we've got 2 units of Marauder Spearmen. We've got 2 Feral Mammoths, 2 units of Skin Wolves, 2 units of Norscan Warhounds, one of which is the Regiment of Renown, the Beasts of Tashnar, who have Anti-Large and Vanguard. Then we've got Throg the Troll King and a Shaman Sorcerer of Death on foot with Spirit Leech and Fate of Buna. And I left the screen up again. I'm really sorry. It's okay though, the game hasn't started, so no harm, no foul. Boop, 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 boop. Alright, and we're off. So, we've got a super wide Norscan front line with a lot of shields that's going to be able to wither the initial small arms fire of all these Thunderers. But the ultimate question is going to be, can the Norscans get their Skin Wolves, their Warhounds, and the Mammoths into the back line to deal with the Thunderers before they take so much damage that they're just wiped out? Just like we saw with the first Dwarf army that fought this Norscan army, they had a lot more range than this one did, and they weren't able to deal with the Mammoths in melee. We see that the cannons have opened fire on the Feral Mammoth, and looks like he's kind of strafing away from them, trying to avoid some of the missile fire, and he hasn't taken a ton of damage. He's lost about 2k health, but he has 10k, so, you know, it's kind of a drop in the bucket. Here we see the lines are starting to meet. The Icehorn Marauders do take a lot of damage from those initial blasting charges, and a couple of units shooting into them, including the Skulder Guard, who do really, really high damage. Here we see both units throwing all of their charges into another unit of Marauders, but they tank it fairly well before this unit makes it in completely unhindered. This unit of Spearmen absolutely eats face as they take a ton of damage. The Norscan Warhounds have dived into the back, taking a cannon there. The Beasts of Tashnar, again, taking a Dwarf cannon completely offline and shattering it before the Dwarves have a chance to respond. This Dwarf cannon did manage to salvage the situation by getting the hell out of dodge, but unfortunately they just run from one wolf into an even bigger wolf. So the Skin Wolves look like they're going to break these guys, and if these guys break, more than likely the Hounds are going to hop on them and just give them a really bad day. But it looks like they do manage to rally and are trying to get out of there as they're being overwatch fired by the Thunderers. But the cannons are offline, and the Thunderers are trying to save the back line. So these Mammoths are going haywire, tearing up the front line on both sides. The Dwarves have completely collapsed in the center and on the flanks. There are very, very few units holding their line. There's a bunch of Dwarf Warriors running into battle, but this Mammoth is going to make a mockery out of all of them. We do see the various Warhound units are pushed back, and some of them are trying to rally, but the Thunderers are doing a good job of trying to get them off the field and getting them to break and go super far away so that maybe they won't have to deal with them. We do see some Spearmen here in the back do try and engage the Thunderers, but they manage to get seen off. But the Skulder Guard now are being completely overwhelmed by a group of Marauders, and this Mammoth is having none of this crap. And he just runs in, Lord of the Rings style, and just crushes this unit of Thunderers, breaking them due to terror immediately. Slayers are completely overwhelmed, trying to be in too many places at once. The Giant Slayers are already well below half health. Throg, unfortunately, he's just kind of standing around not doing anything. He needs to get on this Dwarf Lord and just start pounding his face into the dirt. But it looks like he might be going after the Skulder Guard instead and trying to take out a lot of the valuable units. Here we do see this cannon is back online, and with the Thunderers, they are firing everything they have into this Mammoth, trying to stop it, but the Skin Wolves are saying, no thanks, and just immediately come riding in, slamming right through the Thunderers without giving a damn, and getting into that cannon to take it offline. These Thunderers are trying to get the heck out of dodge, but the Feral Mammoth has rampaged, and in its rampage, it has selected these Thunderers on the list of who gets to die today. The Dragonback Slayers do go in against these Skin Wolves and do manage to break them while doing some damage, but this Mammoth has already chosen his selected meal for the day and is doing some pretty considerate damage. That being said, the balance of power is stuck dead even. The Dwarves do still have their leadership figure alive, who is fighting against Marauders, who aren't really going to be able to finish him off, and the Slayers are doing a really good job of sticking on this Mammoth and hopefully being able to put it in the ground. That being said, the second cannon is offline, though I don't know if Norsca has anything to chase them completely off and ensure they're gone. Here we see another unit of Skinwolves runs in against the Thunderers, and they're getting some Overwatch fire in the rear of the Dwarves from the Javelins, though they do need to be careful with that because the friendly fire will be very, very painful to the Skinwolves. Here we see the Skinwolves now have initiated Operation Ping Pong and are clearly just bouncing from one Thunderer unit to the next, but there is some Slayers there ready to intercept. Here we do see the Mammoth has rallied, and it immediately rampages and just starts heading for the nearest Thunderer unit, wanting to slake its bloodlust. The Dwarf Warriors all around, it looked like most of them are at their full level, or at least the secondary level of their Berserker Rage, which is affording them some physical resistance, as well as leadership and melee attacks. So they're going to be able to absolutely trade very efficiently with these Dwarf Warriors. Even over here, we see the Marauder Javelins are doing a really good job holding up these Dwarf Warriors, because once they get that buff, they're pretty much invincible to basic tier Dwarves. Here we see the Giant Slayers are only down to 14 models with virtually no health, only having 14 unit models left. Because although the Slayers are very good at killing Mammoths, the problem with Mammoths is that they have a colossal anti-infantry bonus, and so every time they swing, sure, the Slayers are really good against them, but they're going to kill a ton of Slayers in that exchange. And we do see that regular Marauders are starting to swarm in on the Slayers, stripping them down, and thanks to their very low armor and the high melee attack of many of the Berserk Marauders, they are more than capable of wiping out these Slayers. We still over here have a Mammoth with well over 6,000 health, who is in really, really good position, and I'm pretty sure the Dwarves are just doomed at this point. All the cannons are offline, all the Thunderers are wrapped up in combat thanks to these Skinwolves constantly bouncing around and keeping them engaged, or the massively overwhelming Marauder forces. We see the Fate of Biuna going down on the last Dwarf Warrior unit that's still in good shape, which is absolutely crushing their health, and no matter where they go, there's an enemy waiting for them. Throg has gotten on the Dwarf Lord and is going to just pound him into dirt, because even though he's mostly designed for anti-large, his stat line is more than capable of absolutely eviscerating a Dwarf Lord. That's assuming that the Dwarf Lord, of course, doesn't get absolutely destroyed by a Mammoth. And the Dwarves hand over the battle there as they were about to lose due to army losses. And once again, the Norskins under King of the Dead have taken the Dwarves and slam dunked them into the dumpster. So this really powerful Dwarf build, which is very similar to the one we saw Turin win with last week, was defeated pretty effectively by King of the Dead's Norskins. Great game. Those Mammoths with the alley-oop, man. Ugh. Brutal. Great game to the Dwarves, though. I really like that Dwarf build. I think the only thing I would note about that Dwarf build is it needed some Longbeards to actually, like, hold the line in place. But things are looking super good for the Norskins if Alien Ambassador manages to win this game, because King of the Dead has kind of brought an army that, although it has a fair amount of anti-large thanks to the Skinwolves and the Marauder Javelins and stuff, it's pretty well kitted to dealing with Dwarves just due to the mass infantry with shields and the double Mammoths. So we'll have to see. That being said, the Dwarves are going to have to earn their victory here up against Pippington's small but very elite Lizardmen army. So we'll have to see who comes out on top. Alright, and I'm going to go ahead and message King to make the map for the final map. I think we're waiting on Alien. Alright, and we're in. Is there any way a human could get a Lizardman dinosaur mount? Very, very carefully, but probably not. There was a... I'll put it this way. A Carnosaur egg was captured by a group of Bretonnians who tried to take it back with them to Bretonia. So it was an egg, right? While on the voyage back to Bretonia, the Carnosaur hatched, the baby Carnosaur, and it devoured and murdered everybody on board. And it devoured and slaughtered the entire crew. And the ship crashed, I think, somewhere on the coast of Estalia. And that Carnosaur is somewhere in the old world still. Jason Dean donating $9.99, which sounds like a great advertisement. Whenever I hear 99, I just think that. Who says, let's get more likes, people. Yeah, I would have loved to see some more likes. It'd be great to get over 100 likes. You know, if you people appreciate this. Saturday tournaments, I'm still not sure if this is something we're going to do. We're kind of just messing around with it today. So if you want this to be a thing, then hitting that like button is a really good way to be like, yes, I would like this to be a regular thing. Anyway, let's look at the Lizardmen army first. We've got 2 units of Chameleon Skinks deployed way out there. We've got 2 units of Temple Guard, 3 units of Saurus, 2 of which have shields. We've also got a Lord Mazdamundi, who does not have Ruination of Cities, but he does have Net, Harmonic Convergence, Apotheosis, and Banishment. We also have a Skink Priest of Beasts, who has just the Transformation of Caden, and we've got a Feral Carnosaur. Meanwhile, over on the Dwarf side of things, we've got a ton of Regiments of Renown. We've got the Dragonback Slayers, the Grumbling Guard, Norgolese Ironbreakers, and the Peak Gate Guard. In addition, we've got 2 other units of Slayers helping with the back line, a double cannon list, and we've got 4 units of Dwarf Warriors trying to fill out the list a little bit more. And then we've got a Rune Lord and a Rune Smith. Both have their respective version of Wrath and Ruin. But the Rune Lord did also come equipped with the Master Rune of Grugni for missile resistance for his entire army, as well as the Rune of Hearth and Home, which gives immune to psychology to all nearby troops, which is going to be pretty important against these big terror causers. So let's see who will win. Magic D, yes. Your entire list has to be, like, submitted, cannot be changed for the entire tournament. So when you submit your list, it has to have all the abilities, spells, and chevrons that you're using for that tourney. And you can't change it. Alright, so the cannons have spoken. And they kill... Oh, that was a much better volley than last game with the Empire Cannon. Empire Cannons. So 11 Temple Guard are dropped in the first volley. That's a really solid opening barrage. Here, though, we do see the Chameleon Skinks are being all sneaky and starting to come up on the back line. They are actually very, very good against Slayers, especially if the Slayers are not facing the correct direction. That being said, it looks like the Slayers are starting to move off to the flank just as the Chameleon Skinks open fire. Oh, that's such a shame he had fire at will on, because the Dwarves didn't even see them until the fire at will popped. We see both runes of Wrath and Ruin go down on the Skinks, drastically reducing their speed, and those Slayers are getting dangerously close, but the poison from the Chameleon Skinks is pretty good at, for strafing Slayers, and more than likely Wrath and Rune's going to wear off before the Slayers even have a good hope of catching. That is so unfortunate that they had fire at will on. If it had been off, I don't think the Dwarves would have even seen them, and they could have just waited till they pulled away from the cannons and took them out. That being said, the cannons are now focusing on Mazdamundi, and they're doing a great job shredding his health pretty significantly. He's taking some pretty solid damage. He's definitely going to want to start popping Apotheosis on himself. Here we see a Slayer unit does actually manage to catch one of the Chameleon Skinks, and due to the deployment, they are so close to the edge of the battlefield, and they're probably going to run right off. Even though the Slayers are taking some pretty gnarly damage from all those poison darts they're getting in the back, because those bronze shields from their whirling axes don't actually provide any save if they're not facing the unit that's hitting them with small arms fire. So it looks like the Slayers are going to continue their engagements there in the forest. Meanwhile, though, the Lizardmen front line, mostly unmolested, has arrived on the battlefield. And this is going to be a tough one for the Dwarves, or for the Lizardmen. There's a lot of really elite Dwarf units in here, but a really nice Banishment goes down, and spells like Banishment specialize against units with high mass, because it tosses them around, but it keeps them in the spell due to their very, very high mass, and does a ton of damage. So Norgolese Ironbreakers, they don't lose a ton of unit models, but their health gets cut in half. And even the Grumbling Guard takes about 5 to 8% of their health, while Mazdamundi just sort of casually plows through a couple of units. Here we see that the Skink Priest of Beast has summoned a friendly neighborhood Manticore and goes running into the cannons, trying to get them offline as quickly as it can. Mazdamundi just starts strafing up and down the flanks of these Dwarf Warriors, doing a ton of damage, and they are all super bunching up on him, which they need to be very, very careful about. You do not want to super bunch up against Lizardmen when they're coming at you from all sides, especially when you have such an elite force of dwarf infantry. Generally, you want to kind of casually spread out and let your elite units get their work done. That being said, the Peak Gate Guard will thrive in this environment particularly, especially because they're in the back, because that means a lot of the other front units are going to be dealing with taking the most damage, while they're going to be providing armor sundering. So look at that, they're knocking these Temple Guard down to 55 armor, which means even Norgrimling's Ironbreakers are capable of hurting them. Here we do see the Slayers are running in against the Carnosaur and the Manticore. The Manticore, they'll dump her, they can get on it. The Carnosaur will be fairly resistant at first to the regular Slayers because he does have 95 armor and he's very, very quick. So he's more than capable of surviving this scenario. Here, though, the monster match has completely entered full force with the Carnosaur and Mazdamundi just plowing into the rear and the flank of these Dwarves. Thankfully for the Dwarves, the Rune Lord does have the Rune of Hearth and Home, so he is providing immune to psychology to this entire network of Dwarves, which is going to make them fairly resistant to getting overwhelmed due to terror. Back here, though, we do see some Temple Guard manage to get into the back against these Slayers, and the Slayers do not want this fight. Temple Guard will body the Slayers. They have they have a fairly solid stat line, but that 85 armor combined with their fairly good stats is going to mean the Temple Guard are going to grind these guys into a paste sooner or later. Here we do see the Dwarf line, unfortunately, has molded into a giant line, and Pippington is doing a beautiful job of running out to the side, charging in all the way down that line, then he backs up, comes back around the side, and does it again. So he is maximizing the amount of damage he does when his Stegodons charge in. Back here we see both cannon units have been completely broken, and they're both being chased off by really nasty terror causers. The Temple Guard look like they're mostly giving up on the Slayers and trying to pull back into the rear of the Dwarves so they can hopefully start causing some breaks. But all is not yet lost for the Dawi. They are starting to push through the front line because they do have vastly superior infantry, and they are slowly but surely starting to grind their way through all these Temple Guard and Saurus, thanks to the really, really heavy hitters like the Grumbling Guard, who are not only very powerful, but are providing that really nice reduction to vigor loss for all the Dwarves, and the Peak Gate Guard, who are sundering the armor of these swords down to 30 and the Temple Guard down to 55. That being said, these continual flank charges are going to be the death of the Dwarves if they don't deal with it. And sooner or later, Mazdamundi's got his second banishment coming up, and if he drops it right here, the Dwarves are they're gonna instantly evaporate. We do see more and more Runes of Wrath and Ruin are being dropped as quickly as they can on these Saurus Warriors and Temple Guard, just doing their best to wear down these units. Personally, I think it probably would have been better. Well, you know what? No, it does more damage based on the number of models, so that, yeah, that's a good cast. Here we do see the Slayers are pulling around to the back, trying to prevent the Stegodons from doing their infinite charges of doom. But the problem with doing that is that this Carnosaur is now uninhibited to come charging in here and just mess stuff up. And here it comes, the Banishment of Destiny, which if we just watch Mazdamundi's kill counter, it's just going to slowly... Oh, well, it actually bears off pretty quick. But it did do a ton of damage to these Dwarf Warriors, the Peak Gate Guard, and Norgrimling's Ironbreakers. That put in a ton of work. But the Carnosaur is not one to miss out on a party and does come charging in, doing a ton of damage to these Dwarves, and I'm not sure if he's going to focus more solely on the Peak Gate Guard, or if maybe he's going to turn his attention instead to the Rune Lord. Here we do see the Manticore flying around, trying to provide some freedom for the Skin Priest of Beasts, and he does manage to buy it a little bit of time, though. His unbinding is going to kill him right now. So that Manticore is down and dead, but I don't think it really matters. The balance of power has started to tick up in the Lizardmen's favor, though it's still a pretty close affair. All the Dwarf Warrior units are starting to break due to the sheer volume of damage they've taken, and Mazdamundi is near his healing cap, and he's still firing off Cold-Bloodeds to keep all of his units under control. Meanwhile, I'm pretty sure the Dwarves are nearly out of Wrath and Ruins by this case, if not entirely. It looks like they've lost this left flank as their forces kind of consolidate towards the right flank, but looks like they have managed to get rid of one of these Saurus Warrior units who was broken, and these Temple Guard are likely going to be very, very close behind as the Peak Gate Guard and Norgrimling's Ironbreakers continue to just absolutely just slap people one way or the other. But I think this, I think the problem with Alien's army is beginning to show, and that it went heavy on having a lot of Slayer units, but unfortunately does not have any Giant Slayers, who would be super helpful in the meta we've been seeing lately with a lot of very heavily armored big units, which the way most Dwarf players have been handling those heavily armored large targets is by bringing 4 units of Thunderers, so they just aim above all the other Dwarves' heads and go and it's dead. But this Dwarf army had virtually no shooting. It went super combat heavy with a bunch of elite units, or regiments of renown backed up by a large core of basic dwarf warriors, and relied on 2 cannons to do all the killing for it. But the problem with relying on 2 cannons is that if your opponent shows up with more than 1 significantly large creature and elite infantry, like these Temple Guard and Saurus build, there's too many things to aim at, and you're not going to be able to get your work effectively done. Plus, when you have stuff like I summoned Manticore, allowing the Lizardmen player to effectively have out 4 monsters, 3 of which are heavily armored and very, very tanky, 1 of which does a ton of natural damage against characters and units, and then is able to summon tons of Manticores onto the field to effectively just cause tons of terror and be able to just dive bomb you with really high AP wherever they need to be. The only reason I think the Dwarf army is still holding at this point is because there's still a fairly large core of Slayers still fighting around. A lot of these regiments are now in very high leadership, and of course all of the command structure is still alive. And here we can see kind of one of the core issues the Dwarf player is having is that he's having a lot of trouble focusing down targets. The Carnosaur is at about 40% health. The Skink Priest is about 40% health. Mazda Mundi is clearly near his healing cap, so he's probably lost about 100 to 110% of his health. Unfortunately, though, the Dwarves haven't been able to focus down any one of these targets. And that's not because the Dwarf has bad targeting, that's because the Lizardman player, Pippington, is very carefully pulling out his monster, sending in another one, pulling out his monster, sending in another one. And that constant weave of monsters going in and out, in and out, in and out, has allowed the monsters to just keep up a really nice cycle and maintain the advantage. Here we see the leadership structure of the Dwarves completely breaks, and with them, that's going to cause a shatter, and the Dwarves are out! So no repeat victory for the Dwarves this week. They have been cut down by Super Dinos and the nefarious Norscans. Great game. Congrats to Pippington on the win. His army is very different from what we've seen yesterday or earlier in the week, because the meta has kind of been developing around having a very large army, because so many people have been designing armies to deal with armies like that. But Pippington has just kind of lucked out when I randomized the charts of who was going to fight who, and he managed to avoid all of those super range-heavy dwarf armies. I think if... do Slan eat and drink? Yeah. I think if Pippington had gone up against that dwarf army that we had in the other semifinals, then I think that he would have been very, very stressed to win that battle. But great game. Both players played super well. Alien put on an awesome performance. I thought his army had a huge disadvantage against all those big dinosaurs, but he did a good job of... He nearly killed all of them, and he completely wiped out all of the Lizardmen's auxiliary troops and their front line. So he did a really good job. Unfortunately, he just didn't have enough anti-large armor piercing to deal with the dino stomps. Alright, and with that, chat, I'm going to go ahead and update the bracket, and we are on to the finals. So we've got King of the Dead versus, if I can find the right one, Pippington. Both of whom are really, really good storied tournament players. Like they've been on the tourney scene for ages now. Dave, the problem with T-Rexes as opposed to elephants is that Lizardmen monsters are cold-blooded, stupid reptiles. They are brutal. They are cold. You know, like you can't develop an emotional attachment with them. They're just these cold, unfeeling creatures that, if given the opportunity, will eat your face off. I think the difference between taming a mammal like an elephant and taming a dinosaur that's a huge divide. Especially because the elephants in our world are typically dwarfed by the dinosaurs of the Warhammer Fantasy Universe. There actually has been a tamed alligator. There have been some relationships between humans and alligators where humans manage to like build a relationship with them where the alligator won't attack them and stuff. But those are rare, and I don't think you could effectively tame one to be a good house pet that you would trust around anyone. I've seen plenty of cases where there are apparently people who manage to get some kind of relationship with a cold-blooded reptile, like lizards or snakes or crocodiles, and like can swim with them and stuff, but you wouldn't like trust your kid to swim with them, or your spouse, or your friend. Like, my dogs, like, I would trust anybody with my dog, so long as I trusted them. Because I'm more worried about them hurting my dog, not the other way around. But, like, anyone, like, the alligators are not that. An alligator would be trained until it wasn't, and then it would bite your face off and you'd be dead. How do lizardmen tame them? Well, you have to remember that lizardmen are also cold-blooded reptiles, and lizardmen were literally created by gods to tame those creatures. Like, the old ones showed up on the planet, and by the time they showed up, all those dinosaurs were already there, and there was an old one named Itzel, who was very, very fond of the animals that lived on the Warhammer planet. And so when he created his spawnings of Saurus and Skinks, Itzel designed them so that they had a natural affinity with the creatures of the jungles of Lustria. So they had like similar sense, they had similar thinking patterns. They just innately understood and developed a bond with each other. Plus, the lizardmen spend centuries training some of these creatures. Like, Carnosaurs have to be raised from a baby by skinks to learn commands, and it's super dangerous. Like, a lot of skinks will typically get devoured or killed, and it takes, like, a ridiculously willful old blood to control them. What the heck are the old ones? That's a super long story. The old ones, they're kind of like gods. They're not actually. They are gods in the sense that they are so advanced, the Warhammer world understands them to be gods. They're not gods like the Chaos gods are gods. They were like physical beings who were just ridiculously powerful and advanced and scientific, and that's a conversation for another time. Anyway. Let's go ahead and look at the armies here. So this is the finals. This is the final game today we're having over here in the Mosquito Swamp. So we're going to Lustria for the final battle. For the Norskins, for King of the Dead, we've got 5 units of Marauders, one of which is the Icehorn Marauders. And I left the stupid thing up again. Boop. Anyway, so we've got 5 units of Marauders, one of which is the Icehorn Marauders. We've got 2 Mammoths, a Death Sorcerer with Spirit Leech Fade Biena, Throg the Troll King, 2 units Marauder Spearmen, 2 units of Marauder Hunters with Javelins, 2 units of Skinwolves, and 2 units of Norscan Warhounds, one of which is the Beast of Tashnar. And for Pippington, we've got 2 units of Chameleon Skinks, 3 units of Saurus, one of which does not have shields, one of which does not have shields, 2 units of Temple Guard, a Skink Priest on a regular Stegodon, so they have the giant bow, which I believe is called Sotek's Sting. We've got a Pharaoh Carnosaur, Lord Mazdamundi, who does not have Ruination of Cities, but he does have Banishment, and then for his regular spells, he has Net of Amnitalk, Harmonic Convergence, and Apotheosis, and yeah, that's it. So, the battle has started. The giant bow has fired a couple shots over here into the Pharaoh Stegodon. It does have the anti-large... No, it doesn't have the anti-large property. Huh. But it is just a giant bow that has poisoned armor-piercing missiles, so it will do a lot of damage. Here we see it lands in these Marauders and literally just kills an entire line of them. Skewers 4 of them. A Norscan shish kebab, one could say. So here we do see the Chameleon Skinks are moving in. The Mammoths are going to want to stay far away from Chameleon Skinks. Chameleon Skinks are the bane of Mammoths. They have very, very high rate of missile fire. They do poison damage, and it's just very consistent. We do see these Warhounds do manage to actually catch one of the units, but they barely have time to do any damage due to the poison, reducing their melee attack to a measly 26 before they get seen off by the Saurus Warriors. But they manage to avoid breaking, so that's not too bad. So really, this is going to come down to the Norscan front line is going to crash into the Saurus front line, which the Saurus front line is going to beat the brakes off of this Norscan army. But there is the problem of the mammoths. The only answer the Lizardmen have to the mammoths that's very reliable is the Carnosaur. The Temple Guard are probably going to get overwhelmed due to the sheer volume of infantry and more than likely a Fate of Biuna. And these mammoths are going to wreck everything else. And this Carnosaur needs to be so careful, because if Throg jumps on it and he gets some support from the Skin Wolves, this Carnosaur is going to get put in a trash can. Here, though, we do see Throg comes in on the Skink Priest of Beast and actually hits it pretty hard, but he gets answered by the Carnosaur, who does have Spirit Leech going down on it, likely trying to force it to rampage. Throg starts whacking it in the face, trying to get some revenge damage. Meanwhile, the mammoths are starting to get engaged in battle. One of them has gone into the Temple Guard, but the Temple Guard quickly defeat their unit of Norscans they're fighting, and he starts getting the heck out of there. The first of the mammoths is summoned, but he's countered almost immediately by the Skin Wolves, who are going to rip him limb from limb. We see a Fate of Biuna go down on these Temple Guard, reducing their health by a ton. A Banishment does go down back here, trying to deal with these Javelins, but they do manage to avoid it, and unfortunately the Banishment wandered off the wrong way. That being said, the Norscan front line has almost completely collapsed for the most part, but all the Skin Wolves are starting to rally and are very carefully looking for targets to pick apart. We do see one unit is dedicated to dealing with a Mammoth, and these ranged units are coming in likely to focus on the Pharaoh Carnosaur. The Pharaoh Carnosaur needs to die. That is like the highest priority for the Norscans. If they can take care of the Pharaoh Carnosaur, then the Mammoths kind of have free range and do whatever they want. Here we do see that the Skin Wolves are trying to finish off this enraged Manticore, and the Beasts of Tashnar do come in to help, but they turn aside at the last minute, and it looks like they're going to chase off maybe the Source Warriors with shields, I'm not sure. We do see another Spirit Leech go down here, and here comes the Beasts of Tashnar running in against the Pharaoh Carnosaur. They do have really good anti-large, and thanks to that rear charge, the Carnosaur's leadership just goes, and it breaks. The Beasts of Tashnar, in my opinion, should just follow him. Oh wait, he gets shattered! Oh my gosh, by Throg smacking him in the butt and just chasing him off like a spooked horse. And the two mammoths are just going ham, plowing through the front line and going straight into those skinks. So the Carnosaur is gone. So the Lizardmen need to find a fast way to deal with these mammoths. But the mammoths are absolutely terrorizing the skinks at this point. Both of them, or one of them has enraged, so he is potentially going to move out of position. So if the Lizardmen are careful, they can take advantage of this and surround him with complementary units. However, this one is going ham on the Skin Priest of Beast, though he is caught in a Stegodon sandwich, which could be very deadly. Skin Wolves, though, are following around Mazda Mundi, continue to do pretty consistent damage. Temple Guard are trying to hold out over here, but they are not immune to Psych. And any second now, that really, really nasty terror from that Mammoth is going to kick in, and these guys are going to break. Both Saurus and the Temple Guard have been seen off over this flank. Pippington needs to get them back in the fight as quickly as possible. Throg is now running back into the fray as all of the real threats to him have been dealt with. He is regenerating, though, every second he's out of battle, so it's not a big deal if he sort of takes his time getting re-involved. We do see that the Chameleon Skinks were broken, but they are starting to rally and head back towards the center, and the balance of power is starting to tip in favor of the Norskins. The only real substantial infantry the Norskins have left are two units of Saurus Warriors, who the Mammoths are more than capable of putting the crunch on. We do see the Skink Priest here is starting to get focused by all these different Javelin units. One of the Saurus Warrior units does break due to terror and taking range fire, which reduces their leadership further. And this Skink Priest is taking a ton of damage from all these different Javelins that are coming in. Another Banishment drops, but it doesn't seem to be super effective. The Beasts of Tashnar do run past the Skin Wolves, and it looks like they're cutting off the escape route of the Skink Priest. Oh no, never mind, they're going after the Chameleon Skinks. So they come in here and just start absolutely munching these guys, and they will do a great job of dealing with them. We see Spirit Leeches have started to drop on Mazda Mundi, who's buffing himself with Demonic Convergence to try and hold off the Skin Wolves, but he's also got two Mammoths wailing on him, and things are looking really, really dicey for the Lizardmen. I think, chat, for the first time in the tabletop series, we are going to have a Chaos Champion. The Norskins are managing to swarm over the Lizardmen. All of those anti-large spears with anti-large Throg, with two colossal mammoths who do so much damage it doesn't really matter, along with all these anti-large Skin Wolves, are more than enough to overwhelm the Stegodons, and they break one of them, and now Mazda Mundi's completely alone, and being completely alone, he decides he can't handle it, his leadership shatters, and with that, Chaos has claimed victory. So for the first time, King of the Dead has claimed the Challenge of the Old Ones Cup for the Saturday edition, and the Norskins have claimed victory at long last. GG to both players. Super well played. And we can go ahead and pop King of the Dead up to his proper placement. So King of the Dead taking it home with Norsca. They said it couldn't be done. Great week. Great week overall. Yesterday we had our first repeat victory with the Vampire Coast. But today we had an absolutely outstanding victory from King of the Dead, who I don't know if his Norscan army would have been able to beat the Vampire Coast army we saw yesterday. The Vampire Coast army that won yesterday was very, very heavy with the with all the guns, but then again, King of the Dead absolutely just ran over a dwarf army that had almost the exact same build. But then again, the Vampire Coast literally had, I think, 8 units of infantry, 4 of which were halberds, with charge defense against large and anti-large. So I don't know if he would have been able to beat that one. But in any event, that doesn't matter, because today is all that matters. And for today, King of the Dead is our champion, and he has led Norsca to glorious, glorious victory in the name of the Dark Gods. Beasts of Tashnar were definitely the MVP. I totally agree with that. King of the Dead used the Beasts of Tashnar to disgusting effectiveness. Every single game, they shut down a priority target. The first 2 games he fought against Dwarves, they both shattered a cannon in the opening seconds of each game. And against the Lizardmen, he used them to great effectiveness, keeping them in reserve until he needed them, then running them in to absolutely screw up those chameleon skinks and tear apart those manticores and the Carnosaur that were causing problems. So yeah, thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed yourselves. You can now go back to watching Italian Stream Shogun or whatever, if that's what he's still doing. Alien Ambassador donating $6.99 says, was awesome. I appreciate the Saturday tourney. Thanks, guys. And I can tell you now, the Saturday tournaments won't happen every week. They will happen sometimes. I'll try and announce them like earlier in the week, not the day before, so that people have time to sign up and stuff. But we have a ton of people who want to play, and a lot of people can only play on weekends. So we'll probably do these like maybe once every 2 weeks, once every 3 weeks, somewhere in that ballpark. So so the next tourney will be this upcoming Friday. We will always, always, always have a tournament on Friday, 2:30 p.m. Central Standard Time, unless something comes up. But like this upcoming week, even though I got to do birthday stuff this week, like we're still going to have our tournament at 2:30. So, yeah, hope you all enjoyed watching. I really like King of the Dead's list. It was nice to see a gunpowder line not win after the last 2 weeks of fighting. All those dwarves just got dunked super hard, which was cool to watch. So, yeah, I will be back later. I'll probably be back on later tonight. I think maybe for some Battlefleet Gothic Armada 2 Tyranid campaign to continue, because I will be home alone tonight, which will be meh, because my family's going to go out and watch a play, but I declined the offer. I invoked birthday powers to skip out on a play. So anyway, thank you all for watching. I'll be back later tonight. I'm going to go back to working on the next Legendary Lord video, which is already 8,000 words long, and we're still in the history section. So, yeah, that's probably going to be like a 2.5-hour video. Thank you all for watching. I'll see y'all later tonight, more than likely. And I'll be around tomorrow on Turin's channel, because I'm going to be playing with Professor Pone in a 2v2 tournament. So if you want to come, if you guys, if you're not in my Discord, you can check the description link below this live stream to join, find a link to join my Discord. I'll be announcing more information on that tonight, but me and Pone are going to be teaming up in a 2v2 tournament for Turin tomorrow. So, yeah. Have a fun day, guys. I will hopefully see y'all tonight.